Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Danny Morley.
And today, Danny and I are talking about a really interesting topic. It's something that I feel really passionate about. And you and I have had a lot of different conversations about this. You've definitely triggered me. I've brought up things in you. You helped me to see a lot of different angles of this whole topic. But basically, the umbrella of what we're going to talk about today is inequality and animals. And I would love for you to talk about what we just experienced on a hike the other day, because that was the catalyst of why we decided to do this podcast episode in the first place.
Yeah, so we'll start with this little story, and then there's so many different, ways we can take this and unpack it. But long story short, Ellie and I were on a narrow trail, and we were hiking with our two dogs. We've got two rescue dogs, both mixed breed, but predominant breed is pit bull. And we're hiking down the little trail, and a woman walks up and she makes a comment about, what was it she said, Ellie? Was it like scary dogs?
Yeah, she stands off with her little dog and she's like, "Oh, scary pit bull." That's what she says.
Yeah, and in response, I was like, "Oh, he's not scary. He just wants to play," because that's the truth. But
yeah,
the dog just wants to like play with every other dog, and he gets so excited. But I understand, like everyone has their fear, and I was not there to force that on her. So was very respectful, and we carried on walking. We gave them as much space as possible. And as we carried on walking, the next people that we passed just a few minutes later, they came up and like, "Oh my God, pit bulls." And they were loving on them. They're like, "We love pit bulls so much. I got a couple of pit bulls at home. They're so loving. They're so misunderstood," and blah, blah, blah.
And wait, really quick, like I asked her, I'm like, "What would you say to describe pit bulls?" Because we just passed a woman that was like, "Scary pit bull." And she looks up at me, she goes, "They're just goofballs full of love." I'm like, that's it right there. Yep. That's their nature. But go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. And it was just incredible to go through, to be walking with an animal who, like, I rescued this dog this year. Now I'm super bonded with, and to be walking with this animal, and then who I love dearly, and then have somebody kind of like say the scary, which I understand, like looks wise and the reputation, and that's what we want to get into today. But then to have that kind of like, "Oh, he's like, you're judging him off other things, like that's not
conditioning, programming. Yeah.
That's not who he is." And then to have the next experience just a few minutes later of somebody like loving on him, and him just lighting up and like waggy tail, and like, oh, it was incredible. And so I Ellie and I have spoke about this a lot, and let's unpack it. So I grew up in the UK where pit bulls were illegal, or they were banned, and I don't know if that got unbanned, and they're going through another process of banning them. And I grew up with this mentality that pit bulls were bad. And I loved dogs, but I fell into the cultural conditioning of pit bulls are dangerous, pit bulls are bad. And listen, dogs can be dangerous for sure. Pit bulls can be dangerous. I am not denying that. My favorite breed is a German Shepherd. They can be extremely dangerous. I understand that they are powerful beings. They have very strong muscles. They can be a danger. But what I learned when I was growing up about German Shepherds is it's how they're trained, and it's how they're brought up. And this is the same thing with human beings. If we're brought up in a very loving environment, we're going to have less programs of hate and fear, of emotional pain that we then project onto everyone else. And, animals, especially dogs, like they're kind of like absorbing our consciousness in the way that go on.
No, I mean, a baby isn't born racist, right? But if you have racist caregivers and they're teaching you how to be racist, then the baby turns into a racist being, right? It's not intrinsically racist when they're born. And that's the same thing with these beautiful, dogs that we call pit bulls.
you look at any puppy,
Ugh,
you tell me how that is a killing machine.
that's
I
right.
mean, yes, I know they have nature and they will, like, as they grow up, but you look at a puppy and you can realize, oh, with the right guidance, this beautiful being, this amazing animal can grow up extremely loving, extremely in control. And that requires the owner to really be in a place of leadership. This is what Ellie and I have had to learn this year, is dogs need leadership.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not an expert by any means, and I'm not an expert on animals, and I know different animals are different, but with dogs, you've got to lead them. And if you lead them, you have a good relationship with them, and then you can communicate with them and they listen. And that is, that's where the breakdown is. But that requires responsibility. And that's not something that at a divine level we have embodied as a society, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's super sad.
Yeah, and for me, I've been fostering dogs since 2004. And in the beginning, when I first got introduced to like animals in the shelter, I had no idea what was happening. I didn't know that there were all these animals in the shelter that needed homes and they were being euthanized. And at first, I was just fostering like the little guys, right? And I've done a lot of little guys. I've done Chihuahuas, I've done Shih Tzus, I've done them all. But when I started walking into shelters, I started seeing like there was an imbalance of the types of dogs that were in there. And most of the dogs that were in shelters were pit bulls. And for me, I always I don't go into things going, oh, what's the easiest? That's the theme of my life is what's the hardest. And so I have been fostering pit bulls since high school. And so I'm 36 now. So it's been a minute since I've, really brought them in and loved them and adopted them into families and all these homes. And there are so many of them that are constantly being euthanized every single day because nobody wants a pit bull because of the stigma that's attached to them. What we know about pit bulls in the United States of America is it's the same thing as you in the UK. They're from the hood. Gangsters have them. I've seen so many dogs who are bred and trained to be fighting dogs. A lot of the dogs that I fostered came from definitely dog fighting rings. My last dog, my ex-boyfriend, definitely did. They found him on the streets, like half dead because he had been fighting. If you look at our dog Bubba now, like he's got half of his ears are missing. He's got cuts everywhere. And we don't, obviously know for sure, but we definitely know that there's probably something that's involved with that.
Yeah.
And even my dog Nala, she came from a backyard breeder in a very, very, very violent, poverty-stricken city in New Jersey. And so this is what is attached to the name of a pit bull. And so people don't understand in reality, we think pit bulls are the problem, and that's not the problem. The root cause of why pit bulls carry around this whole identity of being dangerous and being scary and all these things are the people that are raising them. And that's symbolic of stop trying to fix a behavior with a behavior, stop trying to blame something else. Let's get to the root of why this is even happening or occurring in the first place. And it's the same thing when it comes to these dogs.
Yeah, and this is where it really relates to what we see with the separation of something like racism, let's say. So collectively, we've got a society that is still in separation consciousness, and so things like racism do exist. So we in society, not saying everyone does, certain individuals are in different ways of separation, right? For different programming for everyone, but we are racist towards some people are, not saying everyone again, are racist towards certain races, right? And that lack of equality is what then, because we are at that level of consciousness of being separate from other races within our own humanity, right? We then project that inequality onto the dogs and say, well, this breed, aka race, right? This breed of dog is not safe and not okay. When in reality, yes, there is dangers of pit bulls in the same way that there's dangers of German shepherds, in the same way that there's dangers of other large dog breeds, which do have certain physical, potential
features. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's how the dog's raised and whether the dog is trained properly and has a good upbringing, and how much trauma. I mean, our dog Nala, she has trauma.
Yeah.
You know, she came from an abusive background, and you can tell anytime we have a guest over, she goes nuts. And we've been doing a lot of work this year on training her and allowing her to heal. And dogs heal through leadership, which is what Rachel taught us, Rachel Fiori, our mentor, that they need leadership. They don't heal in the same way that humans do. Humans, obviously, we need to drop into our heart. Dogs are pack animals. They need the human to lead, and that makes them feel safe. For a human, we do the work to find our safety from within our own heart. Yep. So yeah, it's been a huge journey just seeing Nala's growth. And I'd love to share a little bit like personal about Nala, because as I said, I grew up in a house that, and a culture that really did breed in seeing pit bulls as bad and wrong. And I had this unconscious, subconscious belief that they were not good dogs. And then I remember the first time you picked me up from the airport when I came to visit you back in 2021 or 2022?
Yep, 2022.
Losing track of years here. And you had Nala in the car. It was the first time I met her, and she was so sweet.
Yeah.
She was anything but this idea that I built up in my head about, you know, a pit bull. And then I spent some time and I saw her trauma come out, and I was like, oh, and there it is, right? But then there's me slipping into the judgment of her trauma and the judgment of the way that she is, all of this aggression that I'm seeing is because she's a pit bull, instead of, no, the aggression that she's displaying is because she's had trauma.
She's scared.
She's scared. She's been hurt. She's seen a man beat a woman, and now she hates men. That's why she's aggressive. It's nothing to do with the breed of who she is. But then you combine that trauma with a dog breed that has the potential to harm, you know, different to something like a Chihuahua, which maybe might not be as painful if they bit you. And then, you know, then you've got what might be seen as a problem, obviously. But
and you know, before Nala went into this abusive home, you know, I had her for a few months and fostered her, and there was no trace of any aggression at all. We had people coming over my apartment all the time. She never barked even once when I had her. And it was only until after she experienced this first family, and then she came back to me, where I realized, like, what happened to you? You know, she like went through all of this stuff, and now she's petrified and she's on the attack, and it's constantly wanting to protect me from something that she senses is dangerous, which obviously comes from being in this family. But before that, she was not like that at all. And so that shows you right there, like, intrinsically, she's not an aggressive dog. Like, when you really get to know my dog, she is super chill. She loves food. She loves nature. And most of the time she's sleeping and she's cuddly and she's amazing. But when she's afraid is when she goes into that aggression mode, because that's an aspect of her that isn't healed. That's still very much stuck in this place of like, I need to be on guard because it's not safe.
Beautiful. And before we keep going, would you just give the listeners a little bit of the story about, because it's so beautiful, about how you and Nala came to be as companions in this life?
Yeah, I was living in New York City, and I just started feeling the call to start fostering in my small apartment with my friend. It was a four stairway walk up in New York City, and it was tiny, but I was like, I'm going to do it. And so I started fostering all these dogs, and I got a call about this one dog who was found in a backyard, like in every single season. So if you guys are from the East Coast, winters were so brutal back then. They're still brutal, but like back in like 2014, they were like nasty. And so she came to me in a body cast, literally. And she was suffered a lot physically, but she was the most beautiful soul I'd ever met, aside from my first soul dog companion. And I fell in love with her. But, you know, I wasn't in a place to adopt a dog. And so my career was starting to really pick up. So I decided to find her a family, and I found this really beautiful family, and she got adopted. And I told her the day that she got adopted from them, I said, listen, if anything ever happens, bring her back to me. And 6 years later, I got the call, and they were like, we can't keep her. And so I it's a long story, but basically she and I got reunited and she's been with me ever since. And she came to me with a lot of issues. And for me, this is something that you and I discuss a lot of, like, because there's a lot of guilt that I didn't process because I didn't know how to process the guilt, right? I carried the guilt. I felt like I was the reason why she became aggressive, or I was the reason why she experienced trauma. And so instead of alchemizing and like feeling the guilt, I turned into a very permissive parent. So the way that I show up as a parent to her is, I feel so bad that I wasn't there for you in those 6 years. I feel so bad that you experienced all of that stuff, that I'm just going to let you be free and do whatever you want. And that is not leadership at all. And what that looks like is, I let her off leash all the time. I let her do anything she wants. She has free range of my bed, the car, whatever she wants, she gets, because of this unprocessed guilt. And it wasn't until I met you where I started to really see like how that was negatively affecting her. And then, of course, as the universe has it, we went through a lot of really hard situations where it was a huge ding dong to me to step up as a leader and take responsibility. And I think more than ever, even you and I had a conversation about this last night, and it really woke me up again. I was like, I need to be a leader for her if I love her, and if I'm here to be to stand with her and what people say against this breed, then I have to take responsibility and be the kind of leader that talks the talk and walks the walk, instead of just bitching about how everyone thinks that these pimples are like this and if my girl is reacting in aggressive ways and I'm not doing anything about it, I'm part of the problem. And so it's been a huge thing for me to just step into more responsibility for her and for me.
Amazing. Yeah. And so I'd love to keep going with kind of like the Nala story, because then, we hung out a few times and it was really nice to, like, I love dogs, spend time with her, but still running this program of judgment, inequality. And then you came to move in to the van that I was living in last summer with Nala. And it was so fun, like us all being together in that tight little space. And very quickly, looking into her eyes and spending time with her, I could feel, the opening and the awakening and the elevating, and obviously paired with all of the elevating and healing that I'm doing outside of anything to do with Nala, like all of the deep inner work through being a coach and being dedicated and devoted to this path of healing every aspect of my shadow through this amazing organization. Like, I was starting to realize, oh man, like I've been carrying all of this judgment for her, and I've been seeing her as less than because of this program that I had that was given to me by like family members and society growing up, both in the UK and the US. It's not just like one or the other. It's like both of them have this collective kind of projection of inequality towards this breed. And it really started awakening me. And then we got Bubba. And then that was a whole new level. I thought that was like, okay, I've healed these wounds. Right? As the ego likes to say, the shadow likes to hide, right? Yeah. You've healed it all. And then you were like, I'm got the next calling to foster. And I'm like, okay. And immediately I meet this dog as we're driving him away from the shelter that he'd been in for 435 days. And immediately I knew, I was like, oh, he's for me. I was kind of against the fact that we were going to be fostering a dog. And within 3 days, I was like, yep, we're going to adopt him. I knew straight away. I was like, oh, he's here for me. He's here to teach me a lot of things. And immediately it started shining the light on the programs that I still had running of, separation. He's a pit bull. I'm not going to like him. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to be mean. And yeah, he's really allowed me to see all of that programming, because I've fallen so deeply in love with this animal. And it's allowed me to heal and then see the way that I have those same programs of inequality, not just for animals, but for humans, for other races, for whether it shows up other sexes, looking down on anyone or anything as less than, putting myself in that superior place. it really shone a light on that. And I know that was part of the soul contract for both Nala in my life and Bubba in my life. And when we first started speaking, I remember having this kind of like hearing, oh, you had a pit bull. And I'm like, oh, and it's like, oh, I know where that comes from now. Like it comes from my dad. Like my dad programmed that into me. And it even happened when we went home at Christmas, you know, and we're talking about our dog and pit bull, and it's, you know, it's just a collective program. I understand where it comes from, but it's not lovely when you receive the judgment and the somebody looking down on you or an animal that you love just because of their breed.
Yeah. Fostering for so long and working in a lot of shelters and volunteering, it just breaks my heart to see that most of the faces in there are pit bulls. And for me, like, I'm always fighting for the underdog. I think it's just like the very theme in my life. Like, I don't go for what's easy. Like, we could have Chihuahuas and Shih Tzus and Yorkies and these little tiny little poodles, right? But for me, it's like, who's the one that nobody wants? And like, you get to know these beautiful beings, and it makes me cry because they're so loving, and they're just all animals are, right? They're so full of unconditional love. And this is something that I battle constantly, that is really difficult for me, is like watching the inequality of all beings, right? I'm in this place now where, like, even Danny, you can back me up on this, like, it is hard for me to like even like
Kill a fly.
Yeah, or like think
Mosquito.
that we're stepping on ants. Like, I'm like, watch the ants. Like, we go hiking a lot. There's always like these big beetles that like cross the road. And I'm always like, watch the beetle, And it's like, even when like the other day, you and I, we got some sage as we were going on our hike, and we were going to dry them. And I could feel all of this, like, I just felt like, is that right? And maybe that's not okay. And like, I had all this guilt, and like, I was just so like, didn't want the plant to feel any kind of pain if we like, took it off its branch or whatever. And like, we had to really drop in and like honor the plant. And like, that's where I'm at right now, is like, and I can feel the inequality of how we treat Mother Earth, how we treat nature, how we treat trees. Last night, you and I were on a walk, and we saw this one tree that had all these like wires all over it, and there was all this electronics and all over it, and it just broke my heart. And it's like, this is what we do. We think trees and ants and dogs are beneath us, and we are superior in them. And it's like, that's the problem, is that you think that you're superior than other beings, when in reality there is no difference between you and an ant. Your ego just tells you that you're better than them, or you're more powerful, and that just shows you where you are weak and where you are actually powerless.
Yeah, beautiful. And this is something that, you've really helped me see the other side of like where I run this inequality. And you and I are obviously on opposite ends of the spectrum, right? You're so all about equality in animals to a degree that you then put humans down, right?
Yep.
Which we can get into in a minute. But for me, like, spending time with you, like, the word that comes through is just saint. It's like, oh, I get to be around this kind of woman who is so caring of all beings on earth, and it rubs off on me. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of. So thank you for being that way. And it really challenges me to feel and see, where we differ, and to challenge my beliefs. Obviously, we can't talk about all this without I don't want to get lost in the weeds about talking about like diet, but that's another place in terms of like, is it ethical to eat animals, not eat animals? And we always end up there. And again, Ellie and I are on very similar but opposite ends of the spectrum, because similar in terms of we both really care about animals, and we both are very heart-centered. I'd say you definitely care about them more, and this is what I'm aspiring to be, is more in touch and connected with all beings of life. And obviously that just comes from my shadow, my wounded ego that's still in separation and duality, that still needs healing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I haven't eaten meat since 2014 because I read a book on factory farming and it completely ripped me to shreds. And I just could not believe that this is what we were doing to these sentient beings. Like people don't understand, like pigs are 5 times more intelligent than dogs. People think that chickens don't feel, and like what we do to them, the abuse, the artificial insemination of cows, and the way that we rip them away from their all of it, the way they spit on them, urinate on these, like everything, the most disgusting, horrific things you can ever think of is what's being done to a lot of these factory farmed animals. And it just breaks me. It breaks me. And I could cry, like just thinking about it all. And I have had this real hardcore judgment of people for a long time. I carried it for a long time until I started to you really are what are the one that really like shined a light on how I was like really like in deep with this dogmatic view. And I just hated people and judged people who ate meat, because to me they weren't in consideration of what happened to that animal before it got onto your plate. And probably a month ago, you and I were driving together, and this video of this pig being tortured, and like it was horrible. And I looked at you and I had tears in my eyes and I said, I hate humans who do this. And you looked at me and said, that's what needs healing. And in order for me to be a powerful voice for the voiceless, I cannot come from the same frequency of those people who do this to animals, because then that's where I'm at then, and nothing ever changes when I'm vibrating at that frequency. And it's so tricky because you think that you're standing up for people. So you can hate, you can judge, you have the right. It's like, if everything is energy, then you're just playing the exact same game that they're playing. The work that I need to do is, it's not about hating humanity. I need to heal the programs of hatred and judgment and superiority that I run when it comes to these things. And then being at a place of complete power and being a voice for the voiceless in that place instead of the other place. And that's not easy, because these programs tell me that I'm right, that I'm sticking up for them. And it's like, that's how they trap you.
Right.
To stay exactly where you are.
Yeah, and we can bring this back to the example we brought up at the beginning, right? Where this lady's walking past us and she's clearly in some level of judgment of Bubba. She's never met this dog, doesn't know anything about it, and she sees what it looks like, and he's not looking aggressive, like he's not showing his teeth or showing any signs of aggression. I think I had him sat there on leash. And immediately she sees the breed, goes into judgment. Now, in that moment, it would be easy for me to judge her for her own judgment. But then I'm falling into the very thing that is being cast upon me.
Yeah, right.
Like, why? It's so easy for our shadow to judge the person that's judging us. Yep. It's really hard for us to say, oh, they're judging me right now. I understand why. Let me heal what's coming up for me. If I'm for you, right? It's, you get a little bit like Aggie, right? Yeah. The warrior comes out.
So, and not the good kind of warrior, like a vicious warrior. And so it was interesting when I heard her say that, I actually didn't get triggered. It wasn't until you and I spoke about it that I got triggered. And I felt 2 big programs that I run are anger and defensiveness. Like, once you spark my fire, and I don't mean the fire that blazes inside of me that is all love, like I mean the fire that wants to tear you down and wants to destroy you, those get ignited, and then I go into complete defensiveness. And it shows up a lot actually when people come for me in like social media. It's just opportunities for me to heal. But it wasn't until you and I spoke about it where I was like, fudge, like it's still there, like those programs are still there, even though in the moment it didn't activate me. Because in the moment I was just like, oh, okay, she's judging her, she has no idea who this dog is or like what. But then later on I was like, oh, there it is, there's that anger and that defensiveness. And then like I had this moment where I was like, I need to go find her, I need to go put her in her place. And I'm like, Ellie, that's exactly what needs your love right now.
Yeah, and it's not to say that fire can't be very very beautiful and here to show you what, one of the things that your soul wants you to do, right? Yeah. Is to speak up and have a voice. But as you mentioned earlier, it's, okay, that fire's being lit. Let me alchemize the pain that's coming up, whether that's my pain or the collective pain around animals. whatever it is, I need to heal to get out of the separation that I'm in and out of the inequality that has been is being put on me and then getting triggered in me. And then from that place, from my heart, when I'm in oneness, that's when I can start to speak up. That's when I can then use my voice, when it's coming from that place of actual love for all, and not separation. And that's where, that's when people actually hear the message, because I mean, it's really hard to hear the message of an angry vegan. It's like, that's a very difficult message to hear, because all you're hearing and feeling from somebody like is just hate. Is like, you're feeling that, you're feeling the judgment, you're feeling the separation, you're feeling the hate, instead of like inclusivity and like understanding and compassion. And that's, like, go on.
No, I was going to say, when I was a vegan in the beginning, man, like I went on a rage. Like all I would ever post would be like basically saying how everyone that's not a vegan, you're the problem and you need to change because you're the issue here. And I remember the first awakening to what I was doing, because I watched this woman, I was part of this Facebook vegan page in New York, and she posted this video of her going into a vegan fast food restaurant, and somebody had just gone fishing and had a fishing pole there, and he was eating vegan food, and with her phone she went up to him and just started berating him and started just saying things like, how dare you walk into a vegan restaurant and you have a fishing pole and blah blah. And that was my first like, whoa, what's going on here, and is this what I do? And that was like the first light in me that's exactly what you do in different ways. It don't look like that. You're not shoving a camera in someone's phone and berating them publicly, but you do that in all the other ways that you do. And that was like the first like, oh, this is not loving at all. And nobody's going to listen when we come from this energy.
Yeah. And then on the other side, we've got someone like myself that was, it's easier for me to not think about the harm that I'm causing to an animal, because I want to eat I want to eat the chicken sandwich. So let me just not think about where it came from. Let me not. So that being said, like over the past couple of years, because of my own healing journey, I always try and get meat from the highest quality source. That's eaten, pasture raised, grass fed, whatever that means. But still, there's still like levels of superiority and unconsciousness, unwillingness to actually feel, oh, what's in there. And that's especially spending time with you, that's changed a lot. I still eat meat. This isn't a podcast to say don't eat meat, do eat meat, right? Everyone's entitled to their own journey here. But the energy of which I come from is, I drop into my heart and I'm very appreciative and grateful. I try and connect to the energy of the food that I'm consuming and give thanks, and not just unconsciously eat and not just unconsciously consume animals, and not think about the impact, not think about the life, not think about what had to happen for that animal to get to my plate, to appreciate that. And
that's alchemizing, that's alchemizing what you're about to put in your body. What people don't understand is, when you're eating food from like McDonald's or like any place that gets meat from factory farms, you're consuming an animal that went through a lifetime of trauma and torture and inhumane slaughtering. So it's like, the thing that I think we can all do, I think collectively, is if you're going to meet, okay, beautiful, great. Can we honor the meat before it goes into our body and honor the animal that, did sacrifice its life so that you can have this piece of steak or this piece of pork or whatever it is. I remember, the beginning when you and I were first speaking, when you found out that my dog was on plant-based kibble, I'll never forget it. I was on a mountain and I was like, yeah, she eats plant-based food and like blah, blah. And you were like, what? And you completely went into just judging me. Yeah. And that was like our first argument ever. And then probably like an hour later, you called back and you were like, I was judging. I was in judgment. And that was like the first of many conversations we've had about it. But the beautiful part about it was that you recognize it, and most people out there don't recognize it. But and your judging me was probably karmic for me judging other people for, their decisions and all that stuff.
Yeah, I remember getting off that phone call and walking into the house that I was staying at. And the only reason I was able to recognize that is because of the work that we do.
Yeah.
You know, I was about I think we were about 8 months into starting this work when this particular incident happened. And I remember walking into the house and I remember hearing the voices in my head of superiority and feeling the defensiveness. And defensiveness is not something that I feel on a regular basis. It does get triggered, of course, right? And so when it came up, I'm all in this like high and mighty, like I'm walking in the house, I'm like, what's this energy I'm in? Right? And it would be so easy to stay in this, it's self-righteous, that self-righteous energy, super easy to stay in that because like you're right. You want to be right. Your ego doesn't want to be wrong, right? And that was the moment that, you know, my shadow could come out and make you feel like bad for what you've done and make you feel less than, right? And so
and shame me.
Shame,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And I remember feeling that energy and being like, whoa, hang on, what is this? Because that self-righteousness is an interesting energy because to a very low level of consciousness, it can feel good.
Yeah.
It can feel good because you're like, feel right.
Yeah.
But the more that you awaken and feel the vibration of that, that's just the ego, right?
Right.
That's your ego, like, I'm right, I'm the best, you're wrong. And that only feels good because there's a part of us inside that actually feels not right, that feels less than, that feels inferior and feels the need to prove itself in that moment. And so as soon as I slipped into that energy, I was like, oh, hang on. I think there's a little nugget here for me to find. And then did the work and called you back an hour later.
Yeah.
I'd love to keep talking about the word honoring because you brought honoring up. And part of honoring, this is the way that I see it. Part of obviously honoring, if you're going to choose to eat an animal, part of honoring is obviously spending that time before you appreciate it and eat the meal, but also to honor the animal's life, meaning choose where that if every dollar is a vote, or every pound if you're in the UK or wherever, every $1 is a vote. Are you voting towards animals that have grown up in ancestrally consistent lifestyles? Does it get to roam free? Does it have a field to graze in? Or is it stripped away and has to just live in a pen inside, never seeing the light of day, right? And that's what breaks my heart, is like thinking about these animals that never get to go outside, or you know, and this is all of this is just a complete manifestation of the level of consciousness that we are at as a collective. All of this, it's like we can blame humanity, but then we're slipping into blame, right?
Yeah.
What we need to do is hold humanity responsible, and we do that by holding ourselves responsible. So all we can do really is become the change and then become the voice from that place of authenticity. And then it's like, yeah, now we've got a leg to stand on. Now we can talk about this and we can create. And that might be for you is just honoring the animal. And that might mean, oh, I'm not going to spend, you know, $5 on this massive pack of chicken. I'm going to spend $10 and get the organic one. And the hard thing is, you know, times are hard right now for a lot of people with money.
Yeah.
But something to consider. And it's not a cookie cutter answer of, oh, always buy the best meat possible. Like, yeah, we want to do that. But at the end of the day, if you can't afford that, and this is a whole nother layer of this, is like, oh, well, if I can't afford that, like, how am I supposed to do that? Because there's a lot of people that don't earn a lot of money, that can't afford all the supplementation to be healthy on a vegan lifestyle, or can't afford the high quality meats to be healthy on a meat eating lifestyle. It's like there's so many nuances to it. And at the end of the day, all we can do is drop into our heart and become the ways of oneness. The first way of oneness is the way of responsibility. And we start from there. What's my responsibility right now? And when it comes to animals, like, we've got to talk about equality and honoring. Am I honoring the animal?
Yep. Yeah, the way that we treat nature and other beings is a direct reflection of how we treat ourselves,
Yeah.
which is with no sacredness, with no honoring. And, I just really hope, no, I really know that, on our deathbeds, like there will be we are here to be the ripples of change. And I know that it begins, with us first. And that's really taking responsibility for all the ways that I show up in the way that people treat nature and treat animals. Like I am a microcosm of the macro. Did I say that right? I'm
Yeah.
part of all of that. And so I came
Yeah.
here I want to not be a part of this low level of consciousness. I want to lift us up, and it, begins with me. And, you talk about the ways of oneness, and I'll just read a super short paragraph of the way of equality. Living in the way of equality means that you realize at a soul level that no other living thing is either inferior or superior to you. Every soul is exactly equal to another soul, no matter what physical form they have incarnated into. Your soul is a divine expression of sameness as another soul, even though you inhabit different bodies. Powerful and
Very
beautiful.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, the ways of oneness is all about oneness consciousness. And it's really hard to understand and grasp what they are when we're so trapped in duality, when we're so trapped in separation consciousness. When there's so much separation consciousness, we can't understand what the ways of equality even mean.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, the ways of oneness even mean. And in that, the way of equality, like, there's no way.
Yep.
All we're viewing life through is our programs and our wounding.
Mm-hmm.
When we live our life through our programs and our wounding, we don't even have free will, I don't think, like, because we're just repeating the same stuff over and over again. These programs that have been we do have free will to choose, a different path, but when those programs are in there and we're not doing any work, it's really difficult, because that's the lens in which we see from.
Yep. That's it. Yeah. So for anybody at home, I hope this was a really eye-opening conversation and episode today. And I hope it gets you really deeply in reflection. I know for me, I'm constantly deeply reflecting, like, everything that it brings up in me. And because I follow a lot of accounts where I see a lot of abuse against animals and things like that. And so it's always just challenging me to go deeper into loving those aspects of me that show up, that want to rage against humanity.
I think it's really interesting that both you and I have both ended up with pit bulls for dogs, for what we're here to do in terms of, with this work and on the earth. It's like, it's only fitting that we have an animal that gets largely judged for who and what it is, instead of, seeing past that. And that's an ode to, like, the spiritual path and true awakening is the more that you awaken, the more light that you become. The darkness wants to pull you down and project all the shit. And so I just think it's really fitting that's the path that we're walking, and the contracts that we have with those amazing beings and amazing animals.
And the mystical path is no joke. It's no joke.
And I really invite anyone who, if they've listened to this and they've got this far, who does have, any preconceived notions about a certain breed of dog or any animal for that matter, to really feel into, like, where do those feelings come from? Is it a collective program, or is it something else? Is it my own program?
Did it come from your parents? Did it come from your kid? Really look into it.
Because let me tell you, when I opened up to Bubba and Nala, our two pups, like, and realized that I've been carrying all of these programs, it's opened me up to so much more beautiful connection and love in my life. And I know that will continue to unfold, and it's made, like, those dogs have made me a drastically better person because of all of that collective programming, like, allowing me to see that. And it's so beautiful.
It really is. Good job. You've grown a lot. And so have I.
You too.
In a lot of ways. Yeah. Yeah. To anybody out there, if you want to learn more about the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness, check out Rachel's book, Mason's Way, the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness. It's on Amazon. We also have a digital course that accompanies the book called The Introduction to the Universal Ways of Oneness that you can check out on mastersofselfuniversity.com. If you feel called, I know some of you do, to do this deep transformational work that we offer here at MSU, set up a coaching consultation with us to learn how to work with us one-on-one, join an incredible group class, and let's get the journey back home started. Thank you all. Yeah, go ahead.
One more thing I want to add in is we are now accepting applications for our 2024 January spring semester. So if you are interested in becoming a coach, doing what Ellie and I do, becoming a mystical life coach, if you are interested in that journey of really transforming yourself and gaining the skill to offer that love and that coaching to other people, please join us and join us for a certification process. It's absolutely amazing. If you have any questions about any of this, fill out the application. It's on our website, mastersofselfuniversity.com. And I can answer them on a consultation. We can talk through anything if you're interested. So fill out that application if you want to get certified as a coach in this work. I couldn't recommend it enough.
Me neither. Me either. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment. It really helps us to keep doing this podcast for free. Share it with anybody that you feel like will really gain some kind of wisdom or gold nugget of truth. Thank you so much for being here with us. And until next time, we'll see you guys then.
Bye.
Bye.